Okay, we are now live. Mayor, people
It's,
are starting to filter in.
okay, so let's give people a little time to come in. Okay, it's 7:02. I'm just going to welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us at this open meeting to discuss cannabis and Highland Park. This meeting is intended to bring you up to date on where we are on our cannabis discussions as a governing body. And I just want to let everyone know that something just came up today, family related, and we are going to have to wrap today at 8 o'clock. And because of that, I'm going to keep my remarks brief and ask each of the panelists to do the same so that we can get to some of your questions in time for us to say goodnight at 8 p.m. this evening. So, of course, everyone knows that cannabis is now legal in New Jersey. And as a governing body, we have an obligation to pursue and explore cannabis businesses in Highland Park. I think it's important to keep in mind that there are no borders between the municipalities. So nothing prevents folks from walking across the bridge into New Brunswick or up the street to Edison for product and then back into Highland Park. In this scenario, Highland Park will once again lose out on any fees, ratables, taxes, or any revenue from the industry. Highland Park has the highest tax rate in Middlesex County due to a significant lack of ratables. And while I can't predict the financial dollars the industry could bring to Highland Park, I know that 2% of something is much better than 2% of nothing. It's the responsibility of the governing body to research and pursue all parts of the new industry that will have the most positive benefits to Highland Park. And that includes quality of life benefits as well as financial benefits. Right now, with basically no industry or ratables, the tax burden is borne primarily by our rental community through rising rents and by our longtime homeowners, forcing seniors out of their lifelong residences. Highland Park schools are planning a significant program targeting prevention of underage consumption, similar to their very successful alcohol abuse education program. In fact, Mark Krieger, president of the Board of Ed, will be reporting on the school's new programs designed to prevent underage cannabis consumption. We will continue to work closely with the schools as we progress with any cannabis ordinance. I know that there may be some parental concerns because I've heard them. I've asked our Board of Health to work with our social worker, Nicole Huff, to develop a program for parents aimed at preventing underage consumption. Now, I want to move quickly now to our borough attorney, Mr. Ed Schmier, to address the legal aspects of cannabis. Thank you. Ed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have been working with the governing body. There have been several work sessions that the governing body has held, and I've been providing advice to the council and the mayor on the adopted cannabis legislation, which took place in February of this year. I have advised the governing body that it is perfectly appropriate and legal for the governing body to consider and adopt an ordinance which would permit one or more classes of the cannabis activity in the borough of Highland Park. I have also shared with the mayor and council at one of the work sessions the options that are made available under the cannabis law. That is for the governing body to take an action one way or the other before the deadline set forth in the law, which is August 22nd. That is to opt in or opt out of allowing one or more of the classes permitted involving the cannabis in the borough. And the discussions that we've had indicate that the borough is considering opting in for a limited authorization for some of the class activities. Quickly, the classes that could be permitted in the borough involve cultivation, manufacturing, wholesale, distribution, retail, and delivery. It's my understanding the governing body is considering authorizing retail in the retail sections of the borough, and also the delivery services, which cannot be prohibited in the borough, meaning that people can come from New Brunswick or from Edison and deliver product. So with those initial comments, Madam Mayor, I'll let the public begin to make their comments. Thank you.
Well, first, let's hear from Councilman Hale, and then we'll go to the public. Thank you, Mr. Schmieder.
Real quick, and thank you, everybody. I do want to get to the public comments. I do think it's important to put some additional context on how the governing body has discussed many of these issues. The public referendum on public question 1 was voted on quite a while ago, and I overwhelmingly supported throughout the state of New Jersey. I do want to point out that in particular, it was highly supported within Highland Park. When you break down the vote totals, almost 70% of the voters supported legalization at that time, one of the highest in Middlesex County. And so I think that that's sort of an important backdrop about how residents of Highland Park are looking at this issue. As Ed mentioned, there are 6 classes. Our discussions have been focused on opting out of the cultivation, manufacturing, wholesale, and distribution, as those don't fit Highland Park. And in many respects, they don't fit because we don't have land to grow or warehouses to hold or places to process or trucks, places for them to go. And so a lot of those don't quite work for Highland Park. But we do think at this point that a retail component to this can be very beneficial to the borough. And then in addition, a little bit more on the delivery aspect of it. One of the components of this law is that you cannot prevent delivery from a delivery company anywhere in the state of New Jersey. So you can't stop, if Uber decides to start delivering, you can't stop Uber at the border. And that goes to the mayor's point, is that cannabis is legal in New Jersey, and how it gets adopted will go across all sorts of borders. And I think that's an important aspect and a reason why the governing body at this point would like to move forward. We'd like to have as much control as we can over what happens, rather than sort of responding and reacting. We'd like to have some control over this. And so, so as I said, the 4 classes, growing, manufacturing, wholesale, and distribution, we're intending on thinking that we would opt out of those, but we would opt into retail and delivery. In a big picture view, in addition to normal sales tax, there's we're allowed to have a municipal tax of 2% on top of that, as well as annual or licensing fees. And so part of our discussions and deliberations will be about what's the appropriate number of licensing in the borough. We do have a commitment that any of the retail sales or any of the delivery sale operations would be in one of our commercial districts. We have no intention of having any of this sort of outside of Raritan or Woodbridge Avenue or possibly Upper Raritan. So so there are that's an area that we think we would focus on. There is a lot of things that we will learn as we go as the state provides more and more information, as the Cannabis Regulatory Committee gets up and running, that will inform many of our decisions. But as Ed said, we have to make or want to make a decision before August 22nd, so that we're in control of the process much more than sort of being at the wilds of the market. There's, as the mayor said, we have worked, we've talked with Mark Krieger at the school board, and making sure that we have education plans with the school boards, particularly for kids. I think that's an important thing. We will be discussing at some point other potential opportunities that are not part of the legislation as it stands. Things like, we're not exactly sure where cannabis testing labs fit, but that would be something that to test products, that might be something that be available. Also, lounges of some sort. We don't know exactly where those fit at this particular point. It's not that we're against those. It's not that we're saying no to those, but we're saying we don't know right now exactly how those work. And so that's there is that uncertainty. So that's a framework of our deliberations and discussions to this point, that gives a sense of where the council and the mayor are on this issue. We are certainly very interested in learning and listening to the public comment on this. I do think it is sort of important to recognize that cannabis is legal and will be legal in the state of New Jersey, regardless of what happens in what we do. What we're trying to do by opting in is to have Highland Park have as much control over this process as we can, rather than just have it be the sort of wild, wild west. And so I think that's an overview of where we are. I don't think I have anything else, unless Mayor, Ed, or Terry, if there's something I missed.
No.
Okay, so I think we should open it up for questions.
Okay, so Terry is going to ask you to be the one to call on people as their hands are raised.
Mayor, we didn't talk about this at the top. Is there a time limit that we're just in the interest of?
Oh, yes. So as we do with council meetings, we'll limit each speaker to 3 minutes. And then, as I said at the beginning, we need to wrap this up at 8 o'clock.
Okay, and I'll do my best to do double. Usually I'll have assistance of another person do the timing, so I'll do my best. Just for those who don't know, now I'm rusty. *9 if you're on a phone, or use the raise hand button. I see a couple hands raised now, Mayor. And just so people know, there are 44 people attending from the public, and I see 4 hands at this point. Looks like the first up is Dan Stern Cardinal.
Please state your name and address, Dan.
Hi, Dan Stern Cardinal, 221 Harbor Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to be very fast because I want to get everything in 3 minutes. So I apologize for how fast I'm going to talk, but I'm going to try to get through this. So I want to focus this conversation on data. Public policy should be based on whatever data we have. So the question is, what do we know about the presence of recreational cannabis businesses in a neighborhood? Well, the big finding, more than anything else, is that across measures like traffic accidents, crime, use among teenagers, the effects are not a whole lot. Larger trends tend to swamp out any effects from the opening of cannabis establishments. That being said, there have been some studies that focus on kind of the local scale that are useful for drawing some conclusions. So first and most importantly, the evidence for a substitution effect with alcohol is better than the evidence against it. That's from a 2020 review of over 60 different studies. This means that as people start to use legal cannabis, they are less likely to consume alcohol. This matters because across basically every dimension of public and personal health, alcohol is worse than cannabis, and that's not really up for debate in 2021. So to the extent there's a substitution effect, that's a net good. Second, crime. At the neighborhood level, recreational cannabis is associated with a decrease in crime. That's from a 2017 study. At the state level, we don't see a trend one way or the other. National trends seem to drive state level trends. Those data come from the FBI. A comprehensive 2021 review from the Cato Institute found that violent crime has, quote, neither soared nor plummeted, end quote, following legalization. Next, people are concerned about use among teenagers. I'll get right to the point. Cannabis retail businesses don't increase use among teenagers. That's from 15 high-quality studies published between 2013 and 2021. There are 2 studies that show an increase. One from 2017 within a short window, about 2 years following legalization, and another specifically from Seattle in 2020, which spanned a longer period and showed an increase in some teenage cohorts and not in others, with lower use in the out years following the date of legalization. The majority of longer range studies, which is to say 3, 4, 5 years out from legalization, show that any increase is temporary and generally settles at a lower rate after a year or 2. Then there's traffic. A 2018 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found no causal effect of cannabis legalization on traffic safety, and data from Colorado actually showed that a lower percentage of traffic fatalities involved cannabis use post-legalization compared to before. Those data are from the Colorado Department of Transportation.
Warning.
And thank you. And finally, property values. There are fewer high-quality studies on this question, but nearly all of them actually show a modest positive effect, which is to say property values around retail establishments increase and none show a negative effect. So I want to reassure everyone listening, across all these areas, crime, teen use, traffic, property values, the sky will not fall. At worst, the data show a temporary increase in adverse outcomes, followed by a return to the baseline. The weight of the data show either no effects or positive effects. Based on that, based on the best available data, we should permit retail, delivery, and on-site consumption in Highland Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, do we have another hand?
We do. Hold on a moment. Looks like next up is Jeffrey Aaron. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Jeffrey Aaron, 240 South Adelaide Avenue. I'm not surprised at these statistics, and I support what the board seems to be inclined to do. I have a brief statement and then a question. My statement is that if an individual can legally go to a place that sells drinks, not bottles, but drinks, and then presume to drive home, not allowing somebody to go to a store to buy pot, stick it in their pocket and go home is bizarrely discriminatory. Nevertheless, I understand that cultural change is difficult and frightening, and this is why a lot of municipalities are turning it down. I'm not surprised at the progressiveness of Highland Park, and it delights me once again. My question is, and this is sort of a legal question, can the town opt in to everything, considering the fact that you will have to determine the zoning where something is allowed, rather than opt out and preclude your opportunities for other possibilities in the future? Thank you, I'm done.
The answer to the question, Madam Mayor, is yes. The town could opt in for all classes permitted under the law. But once we adopt, or the governing body adopts an ordinance which will authorize one or more of these classes, the ordinance can always be amended after the 22nd of August.
Thank you. And thank you, Jeffrey. Okay, do we have another hand?
It looks like Hava Friedenreich is up next. Please state your name and for the record.
Hi, Hava Friedenreich, 62 Grant Avenue. I think that your perspective in terms of Highland Park not having closed borders is very accurate, but that goes both ways. What communication are you guys having with Edison and New Brunswick to have your plans work together? Because if we did a tax or a licensing fee that was out of line with neighboring towns, then we won't get a slice of the industry.
That's a really good question, Hava, and we have been in touch with New Brunswick, Edison, Piscataway, East Brunswick, Franklin, all the municipalities around us. Some are opting out of all, some are opting in on all, some are opting in on some, but we are having close conversations with the mayor's offices of New Brunswick, for instance, and trying to get closer information from some of the other municipalities. And the borough administrator has been very helpful in reaching out to those municipalities. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Hava.
Okay. Oh, she lowered her hand for me. Thank you, Hava. Looks like John Kovac is up next. Please state your name and address.
John Kovac, 206 North Third Avenue. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm in favor of having retail in town. I think that's reasonable. My question is, I thought I heard at the last meeting somebody say that we were going to authorize 12 retail establishments in town. I don't know if that's correct or not, but my question would be, that seems like a lot. What would be the reasoning behind that as opposed to maybe like 2 or 3? That's it. Thank you.
Matt, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So 12 is not a number that we've around. We don't have a specific number, but 12 is certainly not where we're landing. One model that we've thought about is sort of to model it on the number of liquor stores or or bars that we have, which is more like 6. So we don't have a specific exact number, but I certainly think that we're more likely to do in the neighborhood of 5 or 6, and that they would be required to be spread out among the different commercial districts, so that there could be a limited number on Raritan Avenue, another limited number up on Woodbridge, and then perhaps some other limited number on Upper Raritan. So so I think that's a more again, we don't have a specific number, but I think we're more in the line of 6, not 12.
Okay, thank you, John.
Looks like Mark Lesko is up next. Please state your name and address for the record. Mark, you need to unmute yourself. Mark, just try, can you unmute yourself?
Yep, there we go. Okay. It's different format than I'm used to. Yeah, I'm Mark. Let's go 310 South 4th Avenue. I grew up in Highland Park, and back in high school, I mean, we were all smoking weed. And, you know, like, we used to get harassed all the time. And now it's legal. I think that having something in the township that's regulated would actually stop a lot of the problems that, you know, the kids have, or that people have, or that anyone has. You know, but if we do it, you know, like in an organized way, because people are going to do it whether you like it or not. You know, whether we like it or not, everyone's going to smoke weed. But if we actually had our own thing, and the township could make a lot more money because, you know, taxes and stuff, than if people are going to, I don't know, my friend goes to she's on like medical, like North Jersey, South Jersey. And if we were able to do it here, we could actually make a lot more money and be more regulatory. And like again, the guy before said, it cuts down on drinking. So I mean, it might hurt the drinking industry, but I think it would help like a lot of people. That stress levels, the mental health.
Thank you, Mark. Terry, do we have any other hands?
We do. It looks like we have one more hand, and we're at 47 attendees at this point. It looks like Botian is up next. Could you just state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, hi, Mary Botion, 709 Madison.
Got it.
Okay, I just wanted to make a couple of comments, and then I have a couple of questions to the issue that Highland Park residents had voted in favor of the legalization, 8 months ago. People need to be aware the ballot did not actually ask Highland Park residents, do you want this in your town? So what the state question posed is entirely different than what we're facing now. And the state specifically gives the opt-out provision so that towns can decide for themselves. Residents can give input as to, does this really fit a small town like Highland Park that is filled with thousands of children? The issue of, we don't want to turn into the wild, wild west. Yeah, of course not. And again, that's why many of us throughout town are urging that we actually do the opt-out. We need to take a slower pace on this. We don't need to rush into all this. These are very complex issues with a lot of regulations pending. And most importantly, there are those of us who are concerned about issues other than the fact that it is legal. The issue is, do we want to populate Highland Park with these businesses? And many of us do not want any of them here in town, and that does nothing to prevent those who want to use these products from doing so. They can actually have them delivered to their homes, the recreational as well as the medical. So we have great concerns over these businesses populating our town, where there is no way that children in this town will not become further normalized to it. You can teach everything you want in the schools, you can teach at home, but when you start populating towns with these businesses, it completely normalizes it for these kids. And we want to be watching that extremely carefully. That should be your first priority. With regard to economics, we would really like to know what other businesses and industries is the Economic Development Committee focusing on other than pot. We've been hearing about pot for 3 years, and we would really appreciate a list of other industries and specific other businesses by the end of the work week, by the end of the week, that whatever day we close for the holiday. I think it's fair to have that list issued. Obviously, you can't give specific names of businesses, but you certainly can give industries. You certainly can give some very specific details. And we would really like to receive that.
30-second warning.
Thank you. We need to start thinking outside the pot box. We cannot count on that. If it didn't exist, where would we be right now? And we'd like that list. My questions, with regard to the courier service you're discussing, are you referring to a courier service that would be from a stone and mortar retail shop, or are you referring to the transport of marijuana items in bulk? Because those are very different things. And again, to make clear, those are options we have, and we do not like those options. Anybody who wants it delivered in can do so. We do not have to host a delivery business. So that's one of my questions. The second one.
Mayor, we're at time on this. How do you want me to?
So Mary, let's get to some of your questions now, and then you can certainly come back after other people have had a chance to speak, in case there's time before 8 o'clock tonight. So Matt, I don't know if you or Ed want to talk to the difference between delivery and distribution.
So I can try on the last one. So a delivery business is a business where the model that I think I look at is an Uber business, that it is a place where Uber will pick something up from, could be from a retailer, could be from a holding area, and then go deliver it any place that they get a fare to. That's a type of business that could be housed in Highland Park, where they deliver it out in most likely small cars or personal cars or something like that. That's certainly the delivery business that we were contemplating, not the large truck delivery business. That would be that's the distribution class that we would be opting out of, because we didn't feel that there was a large enough space for that to happen, or we had some concerns about the size of the trucks that may be happening in a distribution. So the difference is a delivery is a one-to-one home delivery in some respects. A distribution is where you deliver to a retail store from a centralized place. So I hope that answered that question.
And Matt, as to other businesses that we've been going after, do you want to talk about Main Street's role in that, or do you want me to do that?
Sure. We can both do it. I can tell you that Main Street and the economic development community, but certainly Main Street entertains all sorts of hopes that people will come to Highland Park in you name it. We would love to have it in Highland Park. So it's certainly not that we only focus on marijuana. That's clearly not it. We've talked at length about attempts to bring maker businesses, so that tie into our art scene. We've talked about bringing additional restaurants, and certainly we focused a lot on restaurants since we have such a thriving, a decent restaurant culture. We'd like to have a lot more of those. To say that there's a list that is it's just not true. There's not a list of saying this is we're going after this particular business. What we're trying to do is position Highland Park as a place where people want to do business, and where there's people, we have a thriving Main Street where people want to come and shop. So I don't think I agree that all we're focused on is marijuana. I think we're focused on bringing as many different diverse businesses as we can down to Main Street and throughout the borough. So.
Yeah, and I just would add two things. One, what we have found is that service type businesses seem to do best in Highland Park. So things like restaurants, hair salons, nail salons, no surprise to anybody who lives here. And those are always channels of retail that we aggressively look to build upon. Another thing is we have identified, or retailers themselves have identified Highland Park as a place where international or ethnic cuisine does well. And as you've seen recently, we've added some new restaurants to town, including one that was opened by folks that actually live in town, the chicken place on Raritan Avenue. So it's really, what we have become known as locally is the place to go for international or ethnic food. And I think that's a great thing for us to build on, and something that we've been doing behind the scenes and through Main Street and Matt's committee over the last couple of years. The other thing that Matt mentioned was maker spaces, but we've also been talking with Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital and some of the other Rutgers folks who are going through their own redevelopment now about what Rutgers types of businesses we can bring into Highland Park as we redevelop and grow, and how we can reinforce what they're doing. So there has always been, you can see I get kind of excited when we talk about these things, because this is the fun part for me. So we are always working on bringing new and exciting restaurants, businesses into town. And as the world changes, as things tend to go more online, Matt's been working on some other things as well that might help us grow and help our downtown businesses grow. So yeah, it's always going on, Mary. Thank you.
All right, we are now at 56 participants, and I've got 8 hands, so we've provoked some interest. Eric Silverman, you're next. State your name and address, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Eric Silverman, 30 South Adelaide Avenue in Highland Park. I would like to say that I've been a resident of Highland Park for 35 years, and I am opposed to having pot shops in town. Someone was trying to give either positive or non-negative comparison with alcohol, but I would like to give a few distinctions that almost all use, if not all use, of pot is the purpose of getting high, getting stoned, whatever the current generation calls it. Whereas with alcohol, most use is not for getting drunk, buzzed, or whatever, that people have a cold beer on a hot day like today, have a tasty mixed drink before dinner, a bottle of wine with dinner, and these people are not getting drunk. Another difference is that there is no such thing as passive drinking. If you're in a room or a restaurant where people are drinking, people who do not drink for whatever reason are not involuntarily ingesting it. Whereas with pot, if people are, unless they're using edibles, if they're smoking it, which is probably the most common use, people are breathing it in. And if there's going to be any conflict between people who want to be breathing this in and people who don't want to be breathing it in, that the state should be on the side of people who do not want to be breathing it in, just like we are with tobacco smoke today. I know what the margin is, that 60% of the people in the state voted to legalize pot, 40% voted against it, but it was also outspent by like 100 to 1. And I don't know if anyone was aware of that, if people are aware of some of these other things in the different patterns of use. I would like to discuss that. I'd like to mention that. And another thing I would like to say is that when people are talking about tax revenue, Highland Park is not a company, not a corporation. We are a polity. We are a society, and that does not only think of the bottom line. And that's pretty much what I would like to say, is that I am opposed to it. That not having, I know there was also, I'd like to say one other thing, that there's been a lot of talk about social justice in the past year, about disproportionate arrests of minority youths for possession of pot. Yes, it's true, but then again, a number of years ago, there was disproportionate ticketing of motorists, of non-white motorists by the state police. We didn't dispose of our traffic laws, we changed policing. And that's the best way of dealing with drugs. Another thing, I don't know how many people here remember this, about 25 years ago, we had a number of members of Congress, and these were mostly Democrats, mostly if not all Democrats, most notably.
Excuse me, your 30 seconds.
Henry Waxman of California, speaking about asking tobacco company execs whether cigarettes cause cancer, cause heart disease, and they didn't want to answer those questions. We do not want a big pot to grow, and by having these places in town, we're only going to be contributing to the growth of big pot, which is not social justice.
Time.
Thank you, Eric.
Mayor, if I could just say that the worry about secondhand smoke is something that we have discussed. Particularly Council President Phil George has brought that up repeatedly, at making sure that that we do everything that we can to address secondhand smoke issues. That's an issue we know is important to people in Highland Park. We have secondhand smoke ordinances before others did, and so that is certainly something that we would do all that we can to incorporate into whatever plan we have ahead.
So I'm glad you said that, Matt, because it reminded me, I had a question for you, Ed. My understanding is that if smoking is not, smoking as in cigarettes, is not allowed in a place, that also smoking of marijuana would not be permitted. Is that true?
That's correct.
So the no smoking laws the borough currently has in place would include marijuana.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Terry?
Okay, it looks like Shelley Sal is up next. Please state your name and address for the record. You may need to unmute yourself.
Oh, there I am. Okay, got it. My name is Shelley Saul, and I live at 366 North 4th Avenue. I'd sent a letter to a number of folks on the council, including the mayor. Attorney Schmier, I did not send it to you, but I referred to the June 1st meeting. And in that meeting, you gave a really, I thought, a very good explanation of what the options are and what the options are come right before August 22nd. And I'm very dismayed and feel it is irresponsible on the part of the council not to make it very clear to the residents that opting out is in no way going to stop us from continuing to consider creating ordinances to opt in even during the 5 years. You know, there's no stopping us from continuing to consider this. Without opting out, I think what we're doing is automatically setting ourselves up for making decisions very, very quickly. I think that it is irresponsible. Attorney Schmier, I'm wondering if you can please, there are a few things I'd like to bring up. Actually, before I continue, I would like to know when is the next meeting that you might consider having, considering that I'm sorry somebody has a personal, issues in their family right now. Can we set up another meeting? Because there's a bunch of things to talk about.
So let me, before Ed responds to you, Shelley, there are the process that anything goes through when it is an ordinance is that it has to be brought up at 2 council meetings. And so each of the following council meetings, residents will have an opportunity to also talk about their feelings about cannabis. I believe, Terry, you're going to have to help me with dates. I believe one is July 6th.
The next meeting is July 6th.
And then it would be the following meeting.
We're now at a 1 per month, although we've discussed the potential for a special meeting in August, but right now, August 3rd would be the next meeting.
Okay.
So I would really request that we do another special meeting.
Okay, and Ed, do you want to answer Shelley's?
Didn't actually make a question yet. I would like to for maybe I did, but I don't remember what it was. Attorney Schmier, I'm wondering, there are a number of things I would like to have you describe. So the opt-out, I mean, we're very clear that opt-out is an option and it does not preclude any discussion or furthering making more an ordinance that would opt in.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So what I would really like to understand is, and have people understand, what is, first of all, what is the responsibility of the council before we opt into anything? Let's say that they're going to go ahead with it, no matter what I say, what my concerns are. What is the responsibility of the council before that time, before August 22nd? And also, can you please describe the complexities? You were mentioning numerous things that have to be put in place and considered: zoning, taxes, all those things, fees, licensure, where it will be, how many. They're so complex. Can you please describe that? What has to happen before August 22nd to opt in?
And just
Well,
Mayor,
the mayor,
the 3-minute mark for Shelley, I just wanted to point out.
Okay,
I can respond, Madam Mayor, if you'd like.
thank you.
The mayor outlined
Thank you for-
process. In other words, if the council is interested in introducing an ordinance, it could do so on July the 6th. Since this ordinance does have an impact on our land use regulations, the ordinance would then be referred to the planning board for them to review to make sure that the ordinance is consistent with retail uses in the districts that are proposed for the retail operation. And then the ordinance would come back for a public hearing in August. And then the council would consider all the comments, so yours and everybody else who may wish to comment at the public hearing. And then if the council was persuaded that they wanted to pursue this, they would adopt the ordinance, it would be published, and all of that can take place before August 22nd.
Thank you, Ed. And Shelley, I'm going to have to ask that the next person get their chance, and you can certainly feel free to come back up again if there's more time before 8 o'clock.
And looks like got 7 hands up, and the next one is Alexis Thomason. Alexis, please state your name and address.
Hi, good evening. I'm Alexis Thomason and I live at 155 Exeter Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I was not able to listen to the first half hour, but since it sounded like you were taking public opinion, I wanted to make sure that there was a pro-pot voice that was coming in. Me and my husband moved here about a year ago. And of course, it's been, kind of a crazy year for all. And we're musicians. We are connected. We have always been a little bit connected to Highland Park nightlife. We play at Pino's and we enjoy the nightlife in Highland Park, and we hope to enjoy it even more now that things have opened up safely. And to that end, I think that Highland Park is, being the very tolerant community that it seems to be, is in a really good position to be on the forefront of this and could, maybe we're all going to stumble a bit, but I think Highland Park is a good place to try some things. And maybe you guys could have a marijuana business here in the way that you see fit, that is legal and that is safe, just the way we go out and we have a glass of wine safely at Pino's. Maybe there's a way we can do that with marijuana. And I don't want to blow smoke in anyone's face. I don't want to blow smoke at all anymore, really. But, it can be a part of a healthy and fun life, just the way having a glass of wine can be. And we need new businesses, and nightlife seems to be an attraction here. I think it could be a really nice part of Highland Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Okay, somebody else?
Yep, you got Sasha Rudy next. Name and address, and remember to unmute yourself.
Sasha Rudy, 247 Cleveland Avenue. So I had the strictest parents when I grew up, and I still managed to find a way to consume it. There will always be a cool parent willing to lie for their kids' friends. That's a parenting issue, not a dispensary one. I was a medical patient in Texas and take it for anxiety and knee pain. The strain I consume is designed to eliminate most of the high. I did that on purpose. Consuming it allows me to not take extremely addictive benzodiazepines for the rest of my life for my autism. If we allow cannabis businesses here, there could be balms, lotions, etc., to help people address their various ailments without heavy psychoactive properties. With so many residents doing their town errands on foot, it's imperative that they be able to obtain marijuana for themselves. Delivery fees can be quite high for such an expensive product. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Sasha. Okay, next.
Oops. I didn't mean to do that. I had Tara Canavera next, which I don't know how I lowered her hand. Give me 1 second. Tara, just state your name and address, confirm it's you. You need to unmute yourself. Tara? All right. Up. Tara? All right.
We'll come back to her.
Okay, hold on, she was out of order, which always messes with me. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Looks like the next one up is someone named Anne. Please state your full name and address for the record.
Ann Sherber, 321 Mansfield Street. I'm offering my support for this ordinance and also for the fast tracking of the opting in. I don't know if any of you have been up to Great Barrington, which has sort of created or remade itself as a kind of a pot tourist destination. I think that if we are to reap the financial benefits that I think will accrue from having pot businesses in town, we actually need to be among the first. And I also think that having pot businesses in town will, of course, bring people into town, which will in turn, support businesses and attract businesses. I mean, I also think that the smoke issue is less of an issue than perhaps it appears to be. I know that, in Great Barrington, I see a lot of people, most people, purchasing edibles, purchasing tinctures, not necessarily purchasing, actual pot. So I think there really isn't a downside to this. And in fact, I think that I think one of the speakers before me warned about normalizing this. And I think that that is exactly what we need to do, is normalize pot in the same way that that we have normalized alcohol. I don't see the downside. So that's all.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, Terry, do we have more people?
Yeah, just give me a moment. Sorry. There we go. Looks like I've got Tara Canavera again, so I'm going to try one more time. Tara, please state your name and address for the record. You need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. Just calling to answer one of Mary's questions.
Tara, first, can you just state your name and address?
Sorry. Tara Canavera, 361C Crowles Road, Highland Park.
Thank you.
I'm calling, I have been a liaison with Main Street from the Commission for Universal Access for many, many years before I was on council. And for at least the last 12 years, myself and some people from Main Street have been working to try and get a children's clothing store in town for years. And I do know that myself and somebody else from Main Street are still working on trying to get that to happen. So I just wanted to let Mary know that that is a children's clothing store is one of the other options we've been trying to get for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay.
It looks like, and Mayor, we're at 7 of 8. We've got 5 hands raised at this point, 2 of which have spoken, 3 of which have spoken previously. So maybe I'll go to the 2 who haven't first, if that's all right.
Yep.
Okay, so next up, Larry Cleos. State your name and address.
Okay, Larry Cleos, 403 Donaldson Street. And I'll try and make this quick. People in Highland Park are going to use marijuana whether we have a business here or not. People outside of Highland Park will go to towns where marijuana is sold. If it is in Highland Park, people from outside of Highland Park may spend additional money while in Highland Park buying marijuana. And I think we should be getting in on the ground floor and establish our businesses first before other towns establish theirs and corner all the business. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, Terry, do you have someone else who hasn't spoken yet?
Yes, it looks like someone named, Gina is up next. Gina, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Hey, I'm just using my wife's account. Sorry. This is Jeff Hirsch. I'm at 261 South 9th Avenue. I agree with Larry that, a lot of other towns are already jumping on the bandwagon. I'm very involved in Flemington, and they just passed a recent ordinance as well. And, people will be flocking there. They're another downtown that's kind of hurting. And I think that's really going to turn them around. I've been a pot user for 11, 12 years. I'm a productive member of society. I own a house, a normal functioning adult. If anything, it's more creative, and I think it'll really just bring some new life and, business, of course, to Highland Park. Colorado has made billions and billions of dollars so far in the last few years just on marijuana. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Thank you.
So Jeff, before you go, are you Jeff Hirsch from the South Side Cleanup Team?
Yes, that is also I.
I just want to thank you once again for what you're doing for our community.
Oh, well, thank you. If anyone's interested, every other Sunday, we meet up at the pavilion on where the farmers market is, and we basically just pick up trash. So you can find info on Facebook about that. But thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, Terry, is there someone else?
It looks like we have, hold on. Gotta lower quote Gina's hand before I get confused. 3 hands raised, all 3 of which have spoken previously, and we have 4 minutes left per your
All
deadline.
right, so why don't we, if it's okay with everybody, can we just take those 3 people and nobody else? And is this panel okay with us staying till a few minutes after 8? Okay. Okay, so let's go.
Okay, first of the round 2, Eric Silverman. Please state your name and address just to confirm it's you.
Well, as previously, this is Kay Silverman.
Oh,
I'm
good thing I
at
called on you.
30 South Adelaide, Highland Park, New Jersey, Unit 6H. I'm very impressed with what we're doing here, and I want to first comment and compliment the council. I've been here now 12 years in Highland Park. I'm also, but I want to make some suggestions. My life has been as a project manager, and planning is everything that we need to know and do to make things work. Everything and every major thing I've worked with over the years throughout the country, massive projects, $10 to $20 million projects, $50 million projects. It's all about planning. It's all about making sure you don't forget anything, making sure that the lists are gone over and over and over again, such as, okay, so we're talking about the positives. What are we doing and what are we ensuring in terms of the wrong thing going on, and how do we stop it? What's the regulatory that we're going to put in place to ensure that our children and our teenagers don't become involved in pot in a way we don't want quickly? I am a mother. I have grandchildren, and I have personal experience with the fact that while we say that there's 2 things that have been said many times over the years to counteract a previous argument. One is that pot leads to doing other things. It's often been stated that pot leads to cocaine and other use. I would say to you that in this wealthy society, there's a lot of statistics to show that is true, as well as saying that it's okay and everyone's doing it, maybe. But also, you're talking to me as a responsible adult, as a homeowner. You're not talking to me as a 16-year-old child who's going to get involved with pot and start selling things to sell pot so they can get it. I'm saying again that we need to make sure our planning is right. And I'm okay with where we're going, but please let's make sure we have a lot of plan in place to answer questions like my concerns about our children and our teenagers in this town. Because they're our future.
Yeah.
They're our future. Thank you.
Yes, Kay. And I think we all agree with you. That's part of the reason we've been reaching out to our Board of Ed friends to see what we can do to help with that. Also, the police department has been getting, will be getting some training from the county prosecutor's office on how to keep our children safe.
How about fines for people who don't want to have someone slip them edible marijuana, or someone who is now taking or using marijuana that wasn't? How about those kinds of things that are very carefully watched? That's all I'm asking. Okay. If we could be of any help, let me know. I've done massive project plans.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your kindness and your incredible help, all of you. Very respectful.
Thank you. Okay, Terry.
Looks like we have Shelley Sal up again next. Shelley?
Yes, thank you. So at the quick question first, at the meeting that the attorney was suggesting we'd have, if an ordinance is worked on, where it has to be talked about or laid in front of us, can we have a meeting before that? Because again, I want to really understand what has been put in place or what's considered to be put in place, similar to how the woman who just spoke, that everything has really been looked at carefully before it's put through. That's a request. Attorney Schmier, what is there any, well, I'll just read my own question. How are federal laws involved in, or, you know, relate to what the states are doing? Are there potential conflicts that we don't know, that haven't been talked about? And then outside of that, if we can talk about the police actually, are they concerned about this? Like, what concerns do they have or have they talked about?
Well, in answer to your first question, I don't believe that there's a actual conflict between what the state legislature did and authorized and what the federal government will or won't enforce. Across the country, there have been other states, as mentioned this evening, that have authorized the recreational cannabis. So the federal government is basically taking a hands off, and they're allowing the states to make their decision. And this governing body is following the state law precisely as adopted. So I don't think there's any worry in my mind as the legal advisor to the borough that we would have a problem with the federal government. And to the police, I guess I would defer to the mayor, who deals with the police a lot, and maybe she or somebody else could comment.
So, you know, whenever there is change, Shelley, you know, it means change in the way our police department does things as well. They are getting, as I said earlier, guidance from the county on how to proceed with cannabis and all the new regulations. So they know that that whether it's in Highland Park or anyplace else, it is state law, and the entire state is going to be dealing with this and their police departments.
Do they have concerns that they've expressed?
Not any more than any other situations. Not really. You can feel free to speak to the police chief yourself if you like.
That's good. That's a very good idea. And let me see if I have a bit more time.
There's 1 minute remaining for your questions.
Oh, okay. Attorney Schmier, because you did emphasize on June 1st, that there are many, many people, including attorneys, who are saying just opt out for now. There's so many opportunities afterwards to slow the process down. Can you talk about that a little bit more, and what would be the benefit?
Well, let me clarify my earlier comments. It was during a work session, and the law, as you know, permits opt-outs and opt-ins. My job as the advisor to the borough was to set forth what the options were under the state law. It wasn't to advocate one or the other. It was to point out what the options were to the governing body when they are approaching this issue. So I wasn't advocating opting in or opting out. The original suggestions were being made that opt-outs would give you more time to get the regulatory body in place, and you could study or benefit perhaps from what they're doing. In actuality, as somebody just mentioned, Flemington, all the neighbors to Highland Park and others are not opting out. And I think that you're going to see come the 22nd of August, a remarkable number of municipalities that will make a selection of the various classes available and then try to determine what's best for their community and then move forward. So that's what I did in the earlier work session, and the governing body heard my advice, either opt in or opt out, and they've elected to go in the opt-in direction, which is perfectly permissible.
What is the lounges and outdoor, outdoor options? How does that fit into these ordinances if they're not involved with retail?
You can regulate if you're going to permit the retail sale. You can regulate what you can allow folks to do. You can either allow pollards or you don't allow pollards. If you're going to allow someone to smoke a marijuana, you can require them to do so indoors. There is flexibility under the statute, and those are the things we're working on in the proposed ordinance.
And so what is the question then when let's say that there's an ordinance developed, we meet a public forum meeting, I don't know what you call it, and there's disagreement with the minutia of it. How is that handled?
Well, who has the disagreement? You mean the public or our enforcement people?
Yeah, the public.
Well, it's like any action that the governing body takes. I mean, it would be introduced, as we mentioned, there would be a public hearing and the public will be given an opportunity to comment. And then if you don't like the ordinance afterwards, then you would have every right to take whatever legal steps you want to take.
I do want to make it clear, Shelley, that public hearing is part of a regular council meeting.
Okay.
Okay, and that was time and a little change. Sorry, it's hard to.
So were those the last three hands?
See, Botian had their hand up, and I'll mention Stephanie Kim Chohan raised her hand, but it was after you had indicated the end. So I'll let you tell me what to do on that one. But first, let's go to Botian.
Mary.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Mary Botian, 709 Madison. I just want to touch base on some of the issues that are continually ignored by folks that are pushing the population of pot businesses in Highland Park. Very importantly, that this really puts a burden on us as taxpayers. I know that the council is interested in trying to receive their 2%. That doesn't come up to very much. I'm not sure what you plan on charging for licensing, but you know, again, even the liquor license that you're allowed to have on premises is only $1,000 a year. I don't know what you're looking to charge, but regardless, again, many people throughout this town do not want any of these businesses. And you really need to start paying attention to the fact that as property owners, renters, parents, we see that there are many other businesses to bring into this town. As taxpayers, we really have a right not to subsidize this industry. That means extra police patrols. There are absolutely historically nuisance crimes increase. We're talking about additional first aid response. We're talking about our community responsibility, putting extra burden on our local hospitals. These are all things that we end up paying for. And you know, that really is not fair for us to have to subsidize when people can get these items delivered to their homes. You know, to that point, somebody mentioned, well, it's not fair, it's very expensive to deliver. Well, that's anybody's choice as a consumer, what you want to do, what you want to not do. But we should not have to subsidize that. And in particular, our children in this town, every child in this town deserves to have the ability to walk anywhere in this town without going by these businesses. The normalization effect was in concern of the children. Also, in terms of this process, you know, a week from today is July 6th, and you're already talking about introducing the ordinance. And that is really too fast tracked. You know that many of us do not want this. And the only thing we're hearing is that, well, when the ordinance is read, we can disagree with it. And when it goes through, we can take legal action. And I mean, is that really how we plan to proceed on this? We've been doing this in Highland Park so long. The trends are there. It seems like the governing body makes a decision. They hear some comments. They stick with their decision. They put the resolution in. Nothing, I don't see that a lot changes in that process. So what can we do to build in this tabling issue and really give this the breathing room it needs? There's so much at stake here. A week from today is absolutely not sufficient. The second thing is, you know, you have received for 3 years information from so many organizations that have no investment in the pot industry.
Mayor,
They're telling you.
2-minute mark.
Thank you, Terry. They're telling you it is environmentally devastating. It does not build up our heart healthy community status. It does not build up our sustainability status. It does not improve our mental health commission status. And, you know, so we're being very, very contrary in many ways to the image that Highland Park is trying to present, and especially its family-friendly, safe image. When towns start bringing these businesses in, those things do change. And no matter what the pot shop looks like, it doesn't change those facts.
All right, Mayor, that we're at that mark. We've been past. Okay. So we have Stephanie Kim raised her hand, Kim Chohan, and then I see another hand. So
Okay, so I'm, Stephanie, I'd love to hear from you, but I don't think it's fair if you get to speak and then we don't let the other person. I did say we were cutting it off at those 3 people. There is we need to do this tonight, and we will certainly have more opportunity to speak. Stephanie and the next person as well, please feel free to speak up at the next council meeting. But we're going to have to cut it off tonight. I'm really sorry, but we need to do that for certain reasons. Okay, so unless anybody on the panel has anything they want to add, Matt or Ed, Terry, then I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you very much for your input. Some of us were taking notes, and we will certainly chew on everything that was brought up here and hope to see you all again soon. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.